there, and welcome to a new episode of the Talking Silkworm podcast. I am David Perez, your host, and today we are going to talk about a buzzword everybody talks about, which is storytelling. And let me tell you, yes, I know it's become commonplace that everybody speaks about this, but there is a reason for that, or multiple reasons for that. And it's important that you get to implement storytelling in your content strategy. I'm going to tell you why in this episode. Storytelling can be a very powerful tool to generate a better connection between your audience and your brand, particularly, as is the case for this podcast, educational brand. Why is storytelling important? Well, in the first place, when people listen to things, they are consuming information that is ephemeral. The spoken word is ephemeral. People hear it and it goes away. Yes, unlike text, for example, where people can always go back to the previous line or the previous paragraph, usually spoken word goes away. So what a story does is create that bridge between the information and the mind through emotion. Yes, let me say that again. It creates a bridge between the information and the person's mind through emotion. Because what a story does, a good story does, is create an experience. It creates a multi-sensory experience that is going to help the person take that ephemeral information and transform it into something that is going to stay in their mind and in their emotion, of course, inevitably. This is going to help retention, and this is going to help connection. That's like the butter. Is the butter in the sandwich that makes everything stick together. That's the emotional part. That's storytelling. So this helps retention, this helps connection, and it also helps building trust and making your content relatable. Because remember, what we're doing with content is not just sharing information or sharing education. We are building up a relationship with the person who is listening to our podcast. Yeah. So in order for that relationship to be real, to be transparent, you need to show yourself like you're at the same level of the other person. You need to be relatable. You need to be trustworthy. That's what storytelling does. So some more specific benefits of storytelling for educational brands. The first thing is it's going to help you humanize your brand. Because sometimes, particularly, we have personal brands, that's good. Usually you have the person's face, the person's photo everywhere. But when you're speaking about an educational platform, usually you have a logo. Yeah, and that's not very human sometimes. I mean, people can relate, absolutely can relate to your logo. But whenever you are sharing information online or when you're trying to build that trust, that logo has to have a human face to it. And this is how you do it, through storytelling. The other element here is that storytelling gives your brand voice. It gives it a voice and it gives it personality. Some brands can be more casual, others can be more formal, others can have like a friendly tone. Some brands even troll their audience. Yes, they play pranks or jokes on their audience because that's part of their identity. So if you want to give your brand that kind of persona, this is how you do it through storytelling. It's it's not the only thing, but it's a key thing you can use for building that human essence in your brand. The next point is it builds intimacy and authority. One aspect or one option is like you tell people something and people like she'll believe you just because you said it. And the other thing is they're going to believe you because you lived it, or because you experienced it, or because you lived through it. That helps you build trust and that helps you build authority. Like this person is not just like coming up with something they read from the internet. This person is coming up with experiences that they lived and that help them build all the knowledge, that they have now, or the wisdom they have now. So that's why that part brings a lot of authority. Then we have The community building aspect. I'm sure you have heard like how storytelling used to be a way of gathering the community, like connecting the community. So the storyteller will sit, let's say, for example, in front of the fire, and then the kids and everybody else will sit around the fire to listen to the storyteller. Is because it attracts, it connects, it builds community. It goes back to making yourself relatable, because if you make yourself relatable, it means more than one person is going to connect with what you're saying, because they are like they feel identified with what you're saying. Yeah. So if you have multiple people who feel similarly, they are going to connect with each other, and eventually they can become fans. They can become an essential part of your brand. How do you collect your stories, or where do you collect your stories, or where do you get those stories from? Well, there are different sources. The first one is just interview your clients, or interview learners, or interview people who have used the service or product that you offer. Yeah, you can go through that hero's journey. Yeah, what the initial stage was, like the discovery, then the challenge, and then the new person that came out of that challenge, or the new transformation in their business or in their lives that came out of that challenge. That is a great opportunity for sharing a story, and of course for building authority, because like this is a story of how my brand, or how my service, or of how the way I support people, or I support businesses, does bring transformation for real. So that's one source. Clients, learners, students, yeah, people who have used your service or product. The other story is, and this requires a little bit more of imagination, but it's totally worth doing, is collecting objections and misconceptions potential clients have. Because if you just tell them the information about the objection, how to tackle the objection, or how to tackle the misconception, that's fine. But if you paint the situation in a way that they see the what could be the real life scenario of this misconception, or the real life scenario of this objection, and how like this can be dismantled, or this can be dismissed, to show that you actually are providing a service that is going to help the person, it's a different thing. Yeah. You are going to make, going back to what I mentioned initially, you're going to create a multi-sensory experience. Like the person is not just going to receive the information, they are going to observe the whole scenario, how the situations evolve, how everything happens in this story. How can you deliver this? Well, you can just start with a simple interview. Maybe you can interview a client who did go through all these steps, or you can prepare something like a sketch, something very simple. Of course, always stories should be short. This is something I should have mentioned earlier. Stories should be short. Keep them short, please. Somewhere around 10 minutes tops. Sometimes they do take a bit more work to create than just like regular content, but it's totally worth the extra effort, totally worth it. And also, like, stories, since they require more work on your end, they also require a little bit more work, investment on the listener's end. So because attention is so precious, we want to capture the listener's attention all the time. And if the story like becomes too long and we start like adding too many elements, the listener is going to just disconnect from it. We don't want the listener to disconnect. We want them to stay engaged. And in order for us to do that, we need like very, very specific details, not saturate the story with information. I know sometimes it's hard because we want to tell the listener everything. We want to show them we know a lot, or we want to cover every possible scenario that is out there. But we can't, and we shouldn't, in a single piece of content. We should only focus in one. All the others can perfectly be used for other pieces of content. Another source is founder vision and team insights. Yes. What moves you to do this? What motivates you to do this job? What drives you? sometimes or most of the times, this story is very, very engaging because people are going to see like, hey, this is not just a thing they do for the money, but like they actually have a cause and they believe in this and they are aware that they are bringing value and they are bringing transformation. So there is, and they're receiving not just the money, of course, that I'm speaking about you. Yes, you're not receiving the money for your services only, but there is also like an emotional compensation because what you're doing has a strong motivation and drives you, and that's what helps you connect with your audience and help them achieve the goals they have. Another story is easy peasy. Just get an industry expert on board and they can tell you a story. You can be kind of a case study. Yeah. If you present information or instructions through a case study, you tell the listeners, or like you in a conversation with an industry expert, you tell the listener what the scenario was at first, and then what challenges appeared, what the conflict was what the roadblocks were, then how the industry expert tackled that, how they strategized to fix the problems, how they managed the roadblocks maybe they couldn't figure out, what workarounds they created. All those things can be represented in the way of a story, and this can be a conversation because also like stories can also be contained in conversations. When I say, or when people say storytelling, it doesn't necessarily refer to the fact that you have to create radio drama type of thing. It is not that. It's like, make sure to share a story in whatever format there is. It can be a conversation, it can be a monologue, it can be a radio drama. Why not? There are ways for that. And also going back to the story thing, the story is composed of the elements we are very familiar with. You have the introduction, we have the conflict, and then we have the resolution. Yeah. So usually that structure is going to help. The you is going to help you structure what you're going to say, and it's going to make it easier for the listener to go through the content. Good. And the last point, which I think I mentioned in a previous episode, is frequently asked questions. Yeah, you can create or you can simulate a conversation where a person runs into all these new elements or new world that that your service offers, and like they have a lot of questions and there are a lot of things they would like to know in order to make the decision to purchase your service. So you can turn that into a story. Maybe you can emulate a conversation. Creativity is necessary here. And I want to emphasize something. I have been there as well. Sometimes when we create content, we try to go the easy route, and we just sit down there and we give a monologue, or we give we just record a conversation like with a list of questions that don't necessarily create a story. And that's easy. And I do understand that sometimes making sure that the information is delivered in a way that builds up a story does take more time and does take more effort. Not much more than the other types of format, but it does take more work. It does take more work. And it's worth it. It is totally worth it. And it's going to help you differentiate yourself from the other thousands of podcasts out there. Because believe me, being there, some of them just limit themselves to the easy thing. So it's a great opportunity. Being relatable through storytelling is essential. In a story, and not everything is perfect, not everything is beautiful. I don't know if you've seen these corporate videos where you can see information about the company and the facilities are beautiful and the people are beautiful and everybody's smiling and they're always getting results and yeah. That's valid for a particular purpose. But when it comes to storytelling, you have the ups and downs. Yeah, you have the success and you also have the quote unquote failure or the challenge or the lesson learned. This helps, going back to humanizing your brand. This makes you feel human, relatable. Yes, you are not trying to sell snake oil here. You are a real person. You are a real team that has faced challenges and has learned from those challenges. Thus, you are able to share that with like that wisdom with your client or with your learner or with your student, and you can help them go through similar challenges as well because you have gone through those yourself. This, of course, has to do with authenticity. Yeah, you are not like a cookie cutter type of like company, or you're not like a porcelain figure beautifully decorating a wall. You're a real person. You're a real team. You're a real company with their ups and downs, and that creates that emotional connection. And okay, there is another point here: AI content. So, like, maybe this next message will not age well because AI is changing so quickly. But by making your message more human, you're making sure you're separating yourself from all of the AI content that is overwhelmingly inundating the internet nowadays. You have audio, you have text, you have video, AI generated that is everywhere now. So there's going to be a point where people are going to just be aware that it's AI content. Like what authority can you build? What trust can you build when the other person knows you didn't do it? When the other person knows it was a machine that did it? How can you build that rapport? Yeah. Of course, AI, I'm not saying AI is bad. It is great. It's a great tool. It is I use it. I use it every day. But I don't use it to replace the connection with people. Yeah. You're hearing my actual voice. You're seeing my actual image, not an AI generated avatar. This is like me, like the way I speak, my accent, my words. This is me. Making yourself different from all that AI generated plastic information out there is going to really help your brand. There is another aspect, and this is a very common concern in particularly corporate podcasts, which is like, okay, yeah, we can do storytelling, but we want to look professional. Like, we don't want to talk about the bad things. We only want to talk about the good things because we want to look professional. We don't want to look bad. Gosh, and sometimes I understand it's not your decision. Maybe it's the CEO's decision or the marketing director's decision. It's tricky because they have like a very, very controlled narrative, or they want to have like a very cleansed type of narrative where everything looks pretty and shiny. But I think you need to strike a balance there. You need to keep a balance between like those narratives, corporate narratives, and a casual tone, a casual voice, because you don't want to be a distant figure to your listener. You want to be a close figure to your listener. So you're going to be speaking in a way the other person will listen to you speaking as if you were having a cup of coffee together. Good? So for keeping things like, you can keep things professional, absolutely, while delivering a story. So first thing is, for this to happen, you need a clear objective. What is the story going to convey? Yes, have an outline for the story. Because if you just create random questions or random like points for the conversation, it's just going to be a conversation where you touch on different points. That's it. You need to prepare that thread, that line of the story in advance. So no, you're going to ask the questions to understand what the first scenario was, then what the conflict was, what the challenge was, and what the resolution was. Okay? So clear objectives. What do you want to achieve with the story? Is it to teach the audience about a misconception they have, or maybe a common mistake they're making? Or is it like about why a company can be transformed through the type of information you share, or why a learner can open up their, let's say, professional opportunities by learning the knowledge you have to share? That is going to keep it very professional while delivering a story. So because it's a story, it is not a white paper. It is not an academic paper. It is not a manual. It is not a primer. It is a conversation. So conversations usually have more or less casual wording, casual tones. and you don't use much jargon unless it's strictly necessary. So you can just try to keep it light. Yeah. Remember, going back to what we were saying, we don't want the people to absorb the facts. First, we want them to absorb the emotion, because what connects, that connecting tissue between the facts and your message. So that connecting tissue between the facts and the person's mind is the emotional part. Yeah. So you want to address that instead of the mind directly. Quality production. If you are podcasting for your business, you gotta have the proper equipment, and you gotta have support from an editing team. And story frameworks. There are multiple ways how a story can be phrased. You can have like flashbacks. You can have like twists in the plot twists. You can have that's like the basic story, the basic structure, which is like introduction, conflict resolution. Yeah, you can have multiple frameworks. They are not exclusive to each other. You can combine them, you can change them, you can rotate them and use different ones and see what works best for your message and what works best for your audience. And expert insights. Expert insights, you have to put in a little bit, not too much, of data, of statistics, of a little bit of credentials, that are going to validate that what you're saying is true. But it's like adding a little bit of spices on the food. Yeah, just adding spice on the food, because that's not the core of it. The core of it is the story, is the message, not the credentials. The credentials are like there to support everything else, but they are not the core thing. So just don't over focus on that. If you want to go more into like a radio drama type of thing or nonfiction documentary type of thing, which is amazing. I love that. You can use resources such as we have music. Yeah. Music sets the tone and sets the pace to the conversation. You have sound effects to emphasize a particular action, a particular expression. You have the possibility to include a diversity of voices. Yes, you can speak with the CEO, and then you can speak with us with a seller, and you can speak with multiple people at different levels in that company, for example, or you can speak with different students from different backgrounds. That multiplicity of voices is going to help people understand that this conversation is emotional in multiple aspects. Like it's not just one person involved. It touches on multiple people's hearts and lives. So to wrap up, just a reminder, emotional connection makes your brand memorable because spoken word is ephemeral. It is not going to stick directly into your listener's brain. It needs to go through emotion first, so it stays there. Transparency humanizes your platform. Yeah. Don't just talk about the good things. You have ups and downs. Everybody has ups and downs. Every business has ups and downs. Do mention that. Do mention that in the content you're creating. It's not going to make you less professional. It's not going to make you less trustworthy. On the opposite, it's going to make you more relatable. And the other point here is, gosh, keep it consistent. Keep it consistent. I'm not saying you have to create a story every week, but at least once a month. Yes, like try to keep that cadence for a story in your content. It's gonna really make a difference. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Do not overwhelm yourself like with super long stories. Keep it like around 10 minutes. Very important. 10 minutes. Do not seek a perfection. No content is going to be perfect. No story is going to be perfect. Even Hollywood blockbusters have plot holes, or like they have parts that are boring, or some of them just flop. Yeah, you have like Hollywood movies with millions of dollars in budget and they just flop. So it happens. Yes, you gotta do it. You gotta do it in order to become better at it. And not all of them are going to be perfect. Not all of them are going to be great. But the more you do it, the proportion of great or good stories it's going to be larger than the proportions of those that are not that good. Allow your brand to be itself. Allow yourself to be yourself. You're the voice of the brand. Yeah. Imprint some of your personality in it. That's amazing. And remember that what you're building here is not just information. You are building a business asset that is going to help build your brand, is going to help build a connection with the audience for the long term. Alrighty, that's everything for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to learn more about how content can help you build communities, build authority, establish new connections, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you need information or support because you don't know how to do it on how to start a video podcast, how to start an audio podcast, drop me a line. You can just go on talkingsilkworm.com/contact and let me know what you think. Yeah. Or if you just have a technical question like, hey, I don't know what mic I should get. I got this one. Will it work? Let me know. Let me know. We can have like a 5-minute coffee session over Zoom and talk it out. All right. That's all for now. Thank you very much and see you next one. Goodbye.